I also always kind of thought their perspective was that means something's wrong. Like, you don't need that. Like, what will people say if they know you're going to therapy? So that's kind of my perception of what I thought they would say. Not that we actually have these conversations.
Welcome to Success Reimagined. I am Dr. Amna Shabir, your host on this journey to thrive at the intersection of ambition and wellness. In every episode, I'll help you challenge outdated definitions of success, discover practical tools and strategies for growth without compromising your well-being. I am so glad you've joined me. Let's reimagine what's possible together. Hello and welcome back, everyone. I have a very wonderful guest today on the podcast with me, Nishat the Dean. Nishat is a passionate advocate for South Asian health, dedicated to breaking the silence on topics that impact her community. As the founder of Brown Girls Health and the upcoming South Asian Care platform, Nishat works to provide culturally compassionate resources and amplify voices within underrepresented communities. Through her work, she addresses barriers to care and fosters open conversations about health, resilience, and empowerment. With a commitment to collaboration, Nishat partners with healthcare professionals, educators, and organizations to create impactful initiatives that center the unique needs of South Asians. Welcome, Nishat.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you and talk about some really important topics today.
Absolutely. I started following Brown Girls Health on Instagram, and I was just so drawn to the evidence-based information that you were sharing, the conversations that you were having on that platform. So I'm so glad that we're going to be able to talk about some things that are pertinent to us, sharing that space as brown women, and kind of exploring deeper on the themes of perfectionism.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited to talk on some of those topics. And I'm glad that I could connect with some amazing professionals like yourself through the platform.
Wonderful. So we use this word quite a bit, right? Perfectionism. And is it a pop quiz word, a popular word that we're using these days or whatever? But what does perfectionism mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So to me, perfectionism is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's a drive to do our best and strive for excellence. But on the other hand, it's the constant feeling of never being enough. I know a lot of people can kind of relate to that on both sides. So I see perfectionism as a mix of both a personal trait and something deeply shaped by kind of our cultural and societal expectations. For South Asian women in particular, it can often be tied to the ideal of being like the perfect daughter or the perfect wife or perfect professional. And a lot of that is driven by kind of the cultural narratives about around being tied to our achievements and our behaviors, appearances. I think it's more than kind of a personal struggle to me personally. I think it's kind of a collection of burdens that a lot of us feel day to day. And it's something that many of us struggle, whether it's our academics, our careers, our homes, our relationships. So I think it can have definitely many facets to what perfectionism is, but that's kind of how I see it. It's not really a direct definition, but kind of a feeling from different perspectives, I would say.
I like how you're leaning into this 360 view of how you're looking at perfectionism because that truly it's the experience. Like we don't care about academic definitions as long as they're landing in whatever way for us. And I love that you pulled on multiple threads over here. How does society define you? How does society look at you? What is society expecting of you kind of deal?
Yeah.
So what comes up for you as I say that?
I think a lot of people kind of can relate to this in a few different ways. And I think, especially being South Asian, that brings another set of things that we feel day to day. And things are changing. And of course, it's different per household and community, but there still is kind of an umbrella feeling of perfectionism to be that perfect South Asian person. And I'm sure many of us have experienced this to different degrees. I was blessed to have kind of a household growing up that was a little more liberal minded and encouraging of myself, but it still didn't change that there were kind of community and cultural norms around certain things. And even if that wasn't something that my family or my parents particularly put on me, it was kind of just a societal, cultural community perfectionism pressure that you still feel. And especially if you're a part of the community, you can feel that surrounding you as well. So, kind of in different atmospheres or environments.
Very true. It might not be our parents directly. And to be honest, like when we step away from it, it's a perpetual cycle of relentless expectations almost that never ends. So, taking a little bit of a deeper look in your own life, would you feel comfortable sharing and taking us back to a moment in your life where you felt this intense pressure to be perfect?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know many of us can probably come up with a handful of stories, but I'll share one that stands out to me. So, before starting Brown Girls Health and South Asian Care, I actually worked in public relations and agency, a firm, which is a non traditional career path for many South Asians and one that you don't really hear too much about. And a lot of people don't necessarily know what it is. From the start, I kind of felt an immense pressure to prove to myself that in a field that wasn't traditional or secure per se. I really pushed myself to excel in this and take on many challenges, working long hours, and really just striving to be my best, not only to prove to myself, but to others because I didn't necessarily take this traditional path or things that are normal or tied to being successful. So that drive really did help me both like internally and externally. It did help me achieve a lot of significant milestones and I was able to accomplish some great things. I was able to become a VP at one of the world's largest and most prestigious PR firms before I turned 30. And that was something I really challenged myself to do. And I was really proud of myself when I achieved it, but it did come with its challenges too. I held myself to really high standards. I rarely allowed room for mistakes day to day. And the pressure to be perfect constantly, it was hard and it was really fueled not just by professional expectations, but also the feeling that I needed to justify my decision to step off kind of a traditional path to, I would say, my South Asian community and South Asian counterparts. And while I'm incredibly proud of what I accomplished on that journey, I've learned that perfectionism often it can come at an expense of balance and self-care. And it's something that I still continue to work on day to day, and especially as I continue to redefine what success and perfectionism means to myself. But I definitely, it was not an easy journey and it was long, one that I learned a lot from. And I'm not saying the journey is done and it's far from done. It is an ongoing work on myself and just kind of my own journey and my career and thoughts. But I felt the pressures of perfectionism through that. And from that, I was able to kind of redefine what that meant to me and how I conduct myself day to day and my career and kind of what success means to myself as well.
I'm so inspired that, first of all, you really leaned into what spoke to you career wise, and you were able to have an idea that is outside of like medicine, engineering, and tech. And so just you expanded and broadened your horizons. And then you're right, it gets exhausting. Like the word when you were talking about, word that was coming to my mind was one, I'm just tired and I'm exhausted trying to first explain my decision to not take something that is considered like the traditional air quotes sort of
Mhm.
deal. And then, well, now that I'm doing this, I have to make sure that I'm excellent at it. And I'm not just excellent, I'm flawless. And also, I have to make sure that I look flawless while I'm doing all of that. Sounds
Mhm.
exhausting.
Yeah, exactly. And just that feeling to me to prove yourself. And again, like I am really proud of myself for how far I came. But once I reached that point, I was like, wow, I'm tired. Like it's a lot to do this. I think it is amazing to set goals for yourself and reach them. But I think it should be something that you do for yourself, really. And, if these are things that you truly want to achieve and not just to prove to others, because I think that's kind of another layer in these things that you need to think about and what's really important to you when you're trying to achieve success and perfectionism.
So, Nisha, during this whole time, during this journey, was there a moment where when someone in your community, your household said those dreaded words, what will people say?
Yes, I have heard that a lot. And I will say, thankfully, my immediate family, they have always been very supportive. They may not have understood everything and exactly what I did for work, but they were always supportive and, they were always confident that you'll be okay. But there definitely was situations where when I talked to aunties or uncles, that kind of like, what does that mean? And then I kind of felt a little bit of like, my parents being like, oh, just say it's something else. And so those conversations did come up in that sense of like, what will people say? Say the right thing so they don't think a certain way or talk about you in the community. So I think that's definitely there, whether it's career, whether it's your relationship. I think a lot of times those things kind of come up of what will people say. And I think that is a deeply rooted thing in culture as well.
Yeah. And then as you kind of like look at that journey, here you are, you're having this experience growing up, you have other friends around you. So when you looked around and you saw your other friends and other South Asian women, and you think about perfectionism, were there similar stories that were shaping around the community around you? Any particular story you want to share, or friends, or like just themes or problems or issues that we were feeling or going through just because of this, we have to hold on to this narrative of appearing perfect.
Mhm. Yeah, I think a little bit of both. Career-wise, I actually don't know too many people in my South Asian community that did veer off the traditional path, which did make it a little hard for myself personally because I didn't find too many people to relate to on that level. So it did feel a little bit original. And, all my friends and community members had incredible careers, but it was a little bit different than my path. So I did find it a little hard to compare to, and it did feel something like I was navigating new or on my own a little bit. But that's not to say that's just career, but I think people did have different kind of experiences that were untraditional, such as, multiracial relationships. There's a lot of those, and traditionally, our culture wasn't very supportive of that. But as that's happening, as that's becoming more common and more people are accepting of that, I know that was something a lot of people were navigating how to go about in their communities with. So even if it might not have been career specific to them, I have seen other people have their own journeys and other things that are kind of taking them off the non-traditional path, or things that are really new to the community and can be eye-opening and honestly sometimes controversial topics. So I have seen kind of those things from my peers and my friends, but certain parts of it did feel a little bit original. And I think just in as our generation goes on, we are kind of paving new paths. And I think that it is common. And, I do hope like future generations and my future kids like will have kind of more of an open understanding moving forward.
Yeah, and openness and receiving. I'm glad that we're having these conversations because not to add my personal bias into it, but also to add it in specific, when you have this very dangerous narrative of staying flawless and not allowing a space for humanity to breathe in. I mean, part of the reason I never shared when I was actively and deeply in postpartum depression was because culturally I felt like it was going to be so inappropriate. And the funny thing is, I heavily judged my own parents. I never shared with them. And when I did share, I sent my dad a message, the article that got published, like, okay, here it is. And I was expecting his reaction to be like, I can't believe like you let us down kind of deal. But he said, good. You needed help and you got help, and now you're helping other people by talking about this. And I was so biased against him myself that I was just so shocked at that reaction. But to the larger point, when I was very much in the throes of postpartum depression, I shared with a friend, and she's South Asian as well. She said, whatever you do, don't tell another person because people are going to think that you're weak.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that it is such a common thing that we experience. And I think to that I can tell a little story too. So, I have always been very pro, like, mental health support, therapy, if having those resources available. And it's something that, like, is a little more common in, my generation, and that people are a little more open to. And I've always felt comfortable seeking those supports. And I always felt that it made like a really big difference in my own life. But these weren't necessarily conversations that I had with my parents or, and I never wanted them to think like I'm doing this because like something's severely wrong. Like sometimes it's just to have a better quality of life and find support in a direction. So I never had these conversations with them. And I also always kind of thought their perspective was that means something's wrong. Like you don't need that. Like, what will people say if they know you're going to therapy? So that's kind of my perception of what I thought they would say. Not that we actually have these conversations, but recently I had an eye-opening conversation with my mom about it, and she didn't even know like I had ever done it or, reach out for support. And she actually told me, she's like, therapy sounds like a really good thing. And she was like, I've heard some amazing things. It can really make an impact on your life. And she was like, I kind of want to try it. And to me, I was just like so shocked in the best way. I was like, to see someone like from an older generation kind of have that perspective and like on their own saying it, I was like, this is incredible. And that they're taking the time to educate themselves. And she wasn't even thinking like, what will people say? And I think that was such an advancement because I don't think things have always been that way. So I was like super supportive. I was like, I can help you find someone, I was like, let's do this. Like, if this is something you want to do, like, I think this is an incredible step forward. I think there is like kind of a step forward to that. What will people say? And slowly but surely, people are making little changes here and there. Yeah.
It just fills my heart so much that your mother, she shared that with you. And what a wonderful way to phrase it as well. I'm so
Mhm.
glad. And you're right. It's the recognition, I think, that there are two ways that we have to address. And I also want to put in a plug for all the wonderful work that you're doing online by opening these conversations and destigmatizing this. When I look at my own journey, and again, whenever I talk about my origins being a South Asian woman, I know that I am a one type. South Asian women come in many beautiful, amazing ways and from different parts of that South Asia. And I'm not in any shape or form representing everyone, but I do feel, and please correct me if you think the other way, there are two things. It's almost like when we're born, there's this itinerary we have to follow. Like, this is the career that you're supposed to follow, and then make sure that you have a life partner and married, and then children, and the amount of children, the right kind of children. It's all laid out, and that it's almost very rigid. And you're supposed to go through that, and you're supposed to very flawlessly, seamlessly go through that while also making sure that all your other roles, like you look beautiful and you cook everything and all those other things, you do that. And I know that some of this is not very like original just to South Asian women, like a lot of other cultures also will feel that same way. And then there is the breathing room for where you're going to access mental health without feeling completely broken. So those two things in parallel, I feel create a really dangerous environment.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I think slowly but surely through dialogue and education, we're kind of finding a place that works and that is less stigmatized, that people can have those over open conversations. And I think that's a large part of it. Just being able to discuss and have support because a lot comes to that. And a lot of things previously in our communities and our culture is you can't talk about those things, which takes away your support system, your resources, which it's just a hard cycle of things. And like slowly but surely, we're undoing that cycle. And I think we're making strides forward, but it does make me happy to see even when people take one step forward because when we put all that together, it really does make a big impact in the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely. So take us to a moment, Nishat, where you felt that I need to overcome this perfectionism balance site. As you mentioned, like there were parts of it that you appreciated and there were parts of it that were just really limiting you.
Yeah.
Was there a click that happened? Was there a series of events? Like what happened and like what really helps you?
Yeah, I think the biggest turning point for me was really redefining what success truly means. And I came to understand that perfectionism isn't sustainable, nor is it attainable. And that was kind of the click in my mindset. And I saw that success isn't about flawlessly just checking every box, it's just about making progress, finding balance, and truly aligning your efforts with what matters to you personally. And I think this shift in my mindset kind of freed me from the constant chase of reaching an impossible standard and really allowed me to focus on my growth rather than my perfection. And I think that was a really big turning point for me. And a key part of kind of this transformation was surrounding myself with supportive people who really valued authenticity over perfection. I think that was a big component of it. And whether it was my friends, families, mentors, or just having a network of people who really encouraged vulnerability and celebrated effort, not just results, was really grounding in my journey through all of this. And I think these relationships really reminded me that it's okay to be human, like you said, and to make mistakes and to have moments of uncertainty. It's not going to be perfect. We're not robots, and that's okay. We weren't made to be. And I think the most liberating part of the journey has really been embracing imperfection, not just in myself, but in others as well, and just giving myself grace when I don't meet a goal or even when things don't go as planned. It was hard at first, but it is a journey of learning and unlearning. And for example, there have been times that I've had to let go of unrealistic expectations, whether it's a project or any kind of personal milestone that didn't turn out perfectly and that I felt like I should have achieved. But instead of seeing those moments as failures, I kind of learned to view them as opportunities to learn and grow. So that was kind of my mindset through this whole journey.
That is wonderful. And I love that you added giving myself grace in there because that is it. Like adding those moments where first you become cognizant of what am I putting myself through? And you said that it's not sustainable and it's not attainable. And if we could have that said louder and over again, that is such a beautiful way to phrase it. Absolutely. I would love for you to share more about why you started Brown Girls Health and now you're expanding it to interesting horizons like South Asian care. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, happy to share. So, I started Brown Girls Health to really address a deeply rooted issue, and that was the silence and stigma surrounding South Asian women's health. Growing up, I saw firsthand how topics around mental health, reproductive health, and body image were often swept under the rug. And it created a lot of barriers for women to discuss these things openly and discuss their needs. So I wanted to create a platform that not only broke this silence, but also celebrated the strength and resilience where people could come and have an open conversation about kind of what they're feeling and take control of their health and find resources that really align with their values and their experiences. So recently, we decided to expand to South Asian care, which reflects an even broader mission. And this was really through, I saw the need in the community and I personally wanted to reach more people because I found how valuable this was. So, with the South Asian Care platform, I want to connect South Asians with healthcare providers who truly understand their cultural, emotional, and physical needs. It's not just about creating a directory, but about kind of fostering a bridge between providers and patients that is truly built on trust, understanding, and shared experiences. With this expansion, it's driven by the vision of making culturally compassionate care a lot more accessible for people, while also addressing the gaps in health equity and representation in South Asian communities who often face obstacles or barriers in receiving healthcare. So, both health platforms have been aimed to tackle challenges like perfectionism, which is so deeply ingrained in our community and affects how we view mental health, as well as body image, societal expectations, and so much more. So, I really feel like by encouraging these conversations around these topics and offering resources tailored to the South Asian community, we're shifting the narrative from perfection to one of self compassion, balance, and also empowerment. It's really about creating a safe space where our community can prioritize well being without the weight of judgment and unrealistic expectations. Ultimately, my goal is to really spark a meaningful change, not just in how South Asians approach health, but in how they see themselves and their worth beyond perfection. Both Brown Girls Health and South Asian Care are steps towards this larger vision and creating a narrative around empowerment in our community.
How can individuals get in touch with you and support your wonderful efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we are mainly on Instagram. South Asian Care is our platform name. We're also on LinkedIn, and our website is launching next month, which will be southasiancare.com, where you'll be able to find this whole digital health platform. So I'm really excited to see this come to life and reach a lot more people.
This episode is part of a special series and my budding book project on unmasking perfectionism. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. Just a quick reminder, while I am a physician, I'm not your physician, and nothing in this podcast is medical advice or any kind of professional advice. Everything shared here is based on my personal experiences, and the views expressed are entirely my own. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love for you to rate, review, subscribe, and share the show with anyone who might need a little inspiration to redefine their own version of success. I'll see you next time. Until then, keep reimagining success one small step at a time.